My sister threw my daughter's birthday cake in the trash because her son didn't like the flavor and demanded that we buy another one he liked. I watched in stunned silence as the pink and white frosted cake, the one I'd stayed up until 2 in the morning decorating with delicate sugar flowers and my daughter Emma's name written in careful cursive, disappeared into the garbage can. The metallic clang of the trash lid closing echoed through my parents' kitchen like a death knell. My sister Rachel stood there, hands on her hips, that familiar entitled expression on her face, while her 7-year-old son Brandon smirked behind her. "There," Rachel announced, brushing imaginary crumbs from her designer blouse. "Problem solved. Now you can go get a chocolate cake like Brandon wants. There's a bakery 2 blocks away. They're open until 6. I'm Melissa Hart, 32 years old, and until that moment, I'd spent most of my adult life trying to keep the peace in my family. Standing in my childhood kitchen, staring at the trash can that now held my daughter's birthday cake, I felt something inside me snap. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, clean break, like a bone fracturing under too much pressure applied for too long. Emma's 5th birthday party was supposed to be a small family gathering. Just my parents, my sister Rachel with her husband Derek and their son Brandon, and my husband James with our daughter. Emma had been looking forward to this for weeks, circling the date on the calendar, talking about her special strawberry cake every single day. She'd helped me plan every detail, from the flavor to the decorations to the exact shade of pink frosting. Strawberry cake with vanilla buttercream and fresh strawberries between the layers. That's what Emma wanted. That's what I'd made. That's what was now sitting in the trash, because Brandon, my nephew, had taken one look at it when we arrived and declared he only likes chocolate. "Rachel, that's Emma's birthday cake," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. "It's her birthday, not Brandon's." My sister rolled her eyes in that particular way she'd perfected over 34 years of being our parents' favorite child. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Melissa. It's just a cake. Emma won't mind sharing her birthday with Brandon's preferences. She's 5. She won't even remember this party in a year." That was classic Rachel. Dismissive, entitled, always assuming the world, and especially her family, should revolve around whatever Brandon wanted at any given moment. And the truly infuriating part was that our parents had always enabled this behavior from the time we were children ourselves. "I'll remember," I said, still staring at the trash can. "Emma will remember. She picked strawberry specifically. She helped me make it." "Well, she should have thought about what other people might want," Rachel countered, examining her manicured nails. "Not everyone likes strawberry, Melissa. It's actually quite a polarizing flavor. Chocolate is universal." Before I could respond, Brandon piped up from behind his mother, his voice carrying that whiny edge that made my teeth ache. "Yeah, Aunt Melissa. Strawberry is gross. I want chocolate cake. Mom said you'd get me chocolate cake." I looked at my nephew, this child who'd been coddled and catered to his entire life, and saw my sister's handiwork reflected in his expectant expression. He genuinely believed that throwing a tantrum would make adults scramble to satisfy his every whim, because that's exactly what had always happened. "Brandon, this is Emma's birthday party," I explained, trying to keep my tone gentle despite the anger simmering in my chest. "We made the cake she wanted. Maybe next time you visit, we can make a chocolate cake just for you." His face immediately crumpled into what I'd come to recognize as his signature pre-tantrum expression. Rachel's hand shot to his shoulder in a protective gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship. "Don't you dare make my son feel bad for having preferences," Rachel hissed. "He's a child, Melissa. He shouldn't be forced to eat cake he doesn't like at a party. That's just cruel." "Nobody's forcing him to eat anything," I said, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. "There are other desserts. Mom made cookies, there's ice cream, but that was Emma's birthday cake, Rachel. You had no right to throw it away." "I had every right," she shot back. "This is Mom and Dad's house, not yours, and I'm protecting my child from being disappointed. Something you clearly don't understand since you're so busy catering to Emma's every whim." The irony of that statement, coming from the woman who'd just thrown away a birthday cake to appease her son's tantrum, was almost funny. Almost. That's when my mother walked into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her face already arranged in that particular expression of practiced neutrality she wore whenever Rachel and I argued, which was often. "What's all the commotion?" Mom asked, though her eyes had already found the situation and made their assessment. I could see it in the slight tightening around her mouth, the way her gaze flickered from me to Rachel and back again. "Rachel threw Emma's birthday cake in the trash," I said, pointing at the garbage can as evidence. "She demanded I go buy a chocolate cake instead because Brandon doesn't like strawberry." Mom's eyebrows rose slightly, but that was the extent of her visible reaction. "Oh, well, that does seem a bit extreme." "Mom, Brandon has very specific dietary preferences," Rachel immediately interjected, her voice taking on that victim tone she'd perfected over the years. "He gets upset stomach from strawberries. I was protecting him from getting sick." Melissa's being completely unreasonable about the whole thing. I stared at my sister. "Brandon gets an upset stomach from strawberries? Since when? He ate strawberry yogurt at our house last month." Rachel's jaw tightened. "That was different. The yogurt is processed differently. Fresh strawberries in cake are too acidic for his sensitive system. His pediatrician specifically said to avoid them." It was such an obvious lie that for a moment I couldn't even formulate a response. I just stood there, mouth slightly open, trying to process the audacity of it. Rachel had always been good at lying, at crafting narratives that painted her in the best possible light, but this was brazen even for her. "That's interesting," I finally said, my voice deadly calm, "because Emma and Brandon were eating strawberries together from our garden just 2 weeks ago when you dropped him off for a play date. Remember? You even took a picture and posted it on social media about how cute they looked picking berries." Rachel's face flushed, but before she could respond, Brandon started crying. Not genuine tears, I noticed. Just noise and dramatic facial contortions designed to redirect attention and sympathy toward himself. See what you did? Rachel snapped, gathering Brandon into her arms. You're upsetting him with your accusations. Can't you just go buy a chocolate cake and stop making everything into a federal case? Why should Melissa have to buy another cake? The question came from the kitchen doorway. James, my husband, stood there holding Emma's hand. Our daughter's face was streaked with tears, and my heart clenched at the sight. Daddy, Aunt Rachel threw my cake in the trash, Emma said, her voice small and hurt. The one with my name on it, the one we made special. James's expression darkened. He was generally an easygoing man, slow to anger, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his grip tightened slightly on Emma's hand. Is that true, Rachel? He asked, his tone deceptively mild. It's not that simple, Rachel began, but James held up his hand. It's actually very simple. Today is Emma's 5th birthday. Melissa spent hours making a cake specifically for Emma. Brandon is not the birthday child. Brandon's preferences are irrelevant. What you did was incredibly disrespectful, not just to Melissa's hard work, but to Emma herself. Oh, please, Rachel scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. It's just cake. If it's just cake, James countered, then why did you feel the need to throw it away? Why couldn't Brandon simply not eat cake if he didn't like the flavor? Why does he need to dictate what everyone else eats? Rachel's face flushed deeper. I don't have to explain my parenting choices to you, James. Brandon has needs, and I meet them. Maybe if Melissa paid more attention to teaching Emma to be considerate of others instead of spoiling her, we wouldn't be in this situation. The words hit me like a slap. Spoiling Emma. Teaching consideration. This from the woman who'd just destroyed a birthday cake to satisfy her son's tantrum. My mother cleared her throat. Maybe we should all just calm down. Melissa, sweetheart, why don't you run to the bakery and grab a chocolate cake? I'll pay for it. We can put Emma's name on it and everyone will be happy. No harm done. And there it was. The familiar pattern I'd experienced my entire life. Rachel creates chaos and makes unreasonable demands. I'm expected to accommodate, to smooth things over, to be the reasonable one who compromises. Our parents enable her behavior by suggesting solutions that require me to sacrifice while Rachel faces no consequences. I looked at my mother, this woman who'd raised me, who supposedly loved both her daughters equally, and I felt the full weight of 32 years of being the peacekeeper, the accommodator, the one who always bent so Rachel wouldn't break. No, I said quietly. The single word seemed to suck all the air out of the kitchen. Everyone stared at me. What do you mean? No? Mom asked, her tone suggesting I'd just spoken in a foreign language. I mean, no. I'm not buying another cake. Rachel destroyed Emma's birthday cake because her son threw a tantrum. That's not my problem to solve. That's not Emma's problem to solve. That's Rachel's problem. Melissa, don't be difficult, Mom said, her voice taking on that edge of warning I knew so well. Just go get the cake. It'll take 15 minutes and then we can all enjoy Emma's party. Why should I asked, and I could hear my voice strengthening with each word. Why is it always on me to fix Rachel's messes? Why am I the one who has to compromise? Emma is standing right here, Mom. She's crying because her aunt threw away her birthday cake, and you're asking me to reward that behavior by buying the exact cake Brandon wanted in the first place? Now you're being selfish, Rachel interjected. This is exactly like you, Melissa. Always making yourself a victim. Always acting like I'm some terrible person when I'm just trying to take care of my son. By destroying my daughter's birthday cake. It was just sitting there. What was I supposed to do? Watch Brandon be disappointed? Yes. The word came out louder than I intended. Yes, Rachel. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to tell your 7-year-old son that sometimes life isn't about him, that sometimes he doesn't get what he wants, and that's okay. You were supposed to teach him about consideration and respect, and not destroying other people's things when he doesn't get his way. But you've never done that. Not once in his entire life. Don't you dare criticize my parenting, Rachel snarled, stepping toward me. Brandon had stopped his fake crying and was watching the exchange with wide eyes. You have no idea what it's like raising Brandon. He has special needs. What special needs? James asked flatly. He's in regular classes at school. He plays sports. He has play dates. The only special need I've observed is an inability to hear the word no because you've never said it to him. Rachel's mouth dropped open. You don't get to talk about my son that way. Then don't talk about my wife that way, James replied calmly. Don't call her selfish for refusing to reward bad behavior. Don't expect her to drop everything and buy a cake because you made an impulsive, disrespectful decision. My father chose that moment to enter the kitchen, probably drawn by the raised voices. He surveyed the scene, his eyes landing on each person before settling on me. What's going on here? He asked. Everyone started talking at once, voices overlapping in accusation and defense. Dad held up his hands. One at a time. Melissa, you first. I took a breath and explained the situation as calmly as I could. The cake I'd made. Rachel throwing it away. Brandon's alleged strawberry allergy that didn't exist. The demand that I buy a chocolate cake. My refusal. When I finished, Dad looked at Rachel. Is this true? Dad, you don't understand, Rachel began, her voice immediately taking on that pleading quality she used when she wanted parental support. Brandon was really upset. He gets so emotional about food preferences. I was just trying to prevent a meltdown. By causing one instead, Dad asked. Rachel's expression shifted, hardening. I don't know why everyone is acting like I committed some crime. It's cake. Melissa can make another one. She's being ridiculously stubborn about this. It took me 4 hours to make that cake, I said quietly. 4 hours to bake it, let it cool, make the frosting from scratch, assemble it, and decorate it exactly the way Emma wanted. And you threw it in the trash like it was garbage. Like Emma's wishes were garbage. Like my time and effort were garbage. I didn't mean it like that, Rachel said, but her tone carried no real apology. apology. You're taking this way too personally. How else should I take it? I asked. You literally threw away something I made specifically for my daughter's birthday because your son wanted something different. And now everyone expects me to just go buy a replacement and pretend nothing happened? Girls, Mom interjected, her voice carrying that particular note of exhaustion she always used when Rachel and I fought. Can't we just find a solution here? Melissa, I understand you're upset. Rachel, maybe throwing the cake away was a bit hasty, but we're family. Surely we can work this out. I didn't do anything wrong, Rachel insisted. Why is everyone acting like I'm the bad guy here? I was protecting my child. From what? James demanded. From not getting his way? From learning that other people's celebrations don't revolve around him? Rachel's eyes narrowed. You know what? I don't have to listen to this. Come on, Brandon. We're leaving. Derek. She called for her husband, who'd been in the living room watching television, blissfully unaware of the kitchen drama. Derek appeared in the doorway looking confused. What's wrong? We're leaving. Melissa is being absolutely unreasonable, and I won't stand here and let her husband insult our son. Derek looked between all of us, clearly trying to assess the situation. What happened? I threw away Emma's cake because Brandon doesn't like strawberry, and apparently that makes me a monster, Rachel said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. So we're going home where we're appreciated. Rachel, don't be so dramatic, Dad said. Nobody called you a monster, but you're all looking at me like I am one. Rachel's voice rose. All because I put my son's needs first. That's what good mothers do. But I guess Melissa wouldn't understand that since she's too busy trying to be the perfect mother who makes elaborate cakes to prove something. The attack was so unexpected, so vicious, that for a moment I couldn't respond. Emma's hand found mine, her small fingers squeezing tight. That's enough, Rachel, Mom said, but her voice lacked real force. No, it's not enough, Rachel continued, seemingly unable to stop now that she'd started. I'm sick of walking on eggshells around Melissa and her precious Emma. Sick of pretending that Emma is so special, so perfect, when Brandon is just as important. More important, actually, because he's older and understands when he's being slighted. Emma is 5 years old and watching her aunt trash her birthday cake, James said, his voice tight with controlled anger. If anyone's being slighted here, it's her. Whatever, Rachel snapped. We're done here. Brandon, get your jacket. Derek, let's go. She stormed toward the back door where they'd left their coats. Brandon, looking uncertain now, followed his mother. Derek gave us all an apologetic shrug before trailing after his family. Rachel, wait, Mom called, moving to follow them. Let's talk about this. But Rachel was already out the door, Brandon in tow, Derek bringing up the rear. We heard their car start moments later, followed by the sound of tires on gravel as they pulled out of the driveway. The kitchen fell silent except for Emma's quiet sniffling. I picked up my daughter, holding her close as she buried her face in my shoulder. I'm sorry your party got ruined, baby, I whispered. Why did Aunt Rachel throw my cake away? Emma asked, her voice muffled against my shirt. Because sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, I told her, aware of my parents standing awkwardly nearby. Mom wrung her hands. Melissa, you should probably go after her and apologize. I stared at my mother. Apologize for what exactly? For upsetting her. You know how sensitive Rachel can be. If you'd just gone to get the chocolate cake like she asked, none of this would have happened. And there it was, the pattern laid bare. Rachel throws a tantrum, makes an outrageous demand, destroys something important to me, and somehow I'm supposed to be the one who apologizes to keep the peace. No, Mom, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm not apologizing. Rachel is the one who needs to apologize. To Emma, to me, for what she did. But she's already left, Dad pointed out, and she's upset. You know how she gets when she's upset. She might not come around for weeks. The implication was clear. I should be the one to fix this, to reach out, to smooth things over, because that's what I always did. That was my role in this family, the accommodator, the peacekeeper, the one who sacrificed so Rachel wouldn't have to face consequences. But something had shifted inside me when I watched that cake disappear into the trash. Something fundamental had broken, and I realized I didn't want to fix it. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen windows, casting long shadows across the floor where I still stood holding Emma. My parents looked at me with expressions I'd seen countless times before, that mixture of expectation and mild disapproval that meant they wanted me to be reasonable, to be the bigger person, to make everything okay again. I think we should go home, I said quietly, setting Emma down and taking her hand. James, can you grab Emma's presents from the living room? Melissa, don't be like this, Mom said, her voice taking on that pleading tone. Stay, we'll figure something out. I can make a quick cake, or we can do ice cream and cookies. Emma, honey, wouldn't you like some of Grandma's chocolate chip cookies? Emma looked up at me, her eyes still red from crying, and I saw in her expression a question that children shouldn't have to ask. Am I worth standing up for? Am I important enough? We're going home, I repeated firmly. Emma deserves better than this. Better than having her special day treated like it doesn't matter because Brandon wanted something different. You're overreacting, Dad said, his voice carrying that edge of paternal authority he used when he wanted to end a discussion. Kids fight, sisters fight, this will all blow over by next week. Will it? I asked, looking between my parents. Tell me something. When was the last time Rachel apologized for anything she did to me? When was the last time you actually held her accountable instead of asking me to be understanding? The silence that followed was telling. That's what I thought, I said. James, the presents? My husband nodded and disappeared into the living room. I could hear him gathering the wrapped gifts, the rustle of paper and ribbon. Melissa Ann Hart, Mom said, using my full name like I was a child being scolded. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Rachel made a mistake. She'll realize that when she calms down. But if you leave like this, if you make this into some big dramatic thing, it'll be so much harder to repair. To repair, I repeated slowly. You mean to sweep under the rug, to pretend it didn't happen, to go Go back to normal, where Rachel does whatever she wants, and I'm expected to just accept it. That's not fair, Dad interjected. Your mother and I have always tried to treat you girls equally. The laugh that escaped me was bitter. Equally. Right. Let me ask you something, Dad. How much money have you loaned Rachel in the past 5 years? The money for her car when she wrecked hers, the down payment help for her house, the credit card debt you've paid off? His jaw tightened. That's between Rachel and us. It has nothing to do with this situation. It has everything to do with this situation, I countered, because it's part of the pattern. Rachel wants something. Rachel gets it. Rachel makes a mess, someone else cleans it up. Rachel throws a tantrum, everyone scrambles to make her happy. And if I dare to say no, if I dare to have boundaries, suddenly I'm the problem. We helped Rachel because she needed help, Mom said defensively. You and James are doing well financially. Rachel and Derek struggle. That's just being good parents, helping the child who needs it more. And what about emotional support? I asked. What about teaching Rachel that actions have consequences? What about protecting your granddaughter from watching her aunt destroy something made specifically for her? Where's the help there? James returned with an armload of presents. Emma's small pile of gifts from her grandparents and aunt's family, or what was supposed to be from aunt's family. I noticed there was no gift with Rachel's name on it. Let me guess, I said, pointing at the presents. Rachel didn't bring a gift because she was planning to give Emma money, but she left before she could? Mom's expression confirmed my suspicion. It was another pattern I'd noticed over the years. Rachel rarely put thought into gifts, usually defaulting to cash or gift cards. While I spent time selecting meaningful presents for Brandon's birthdays and Christmas, it's the thought that counts, Mom said weakly. Except there was no thought, James said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard him speak to my parents. There was no gift, no consideration for Emma's preferences, and certainly no respect for the work Melissa put into making this day special for our daughter. James, please, Dad said. Don't make this worse. I'm not the one making it worse, James replied. I'm stating facts. Rachel threw away a birthday cake. She demanded Melissa buy a replacement to suit Brandon's preferences. She called Melissa selfish for refusing. She insulted Melissa's parenting. And now you're asking us to stay and pretend none of that happened, so Rachel won't be upset when she eventually decides to grace us with her presence again. The accuracy of his summary seemed to rob my parents of arguments. They stood there, looking uncomfortable, probably wishing we would all just go back to the familiar script where I accommodated and compromised until everyone was happy. Everyone except me. We're leaving, I said again, moving toward the door. Emma, say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa. Emma hugged my parents, her movements subdued, none of the excited energy she'd had when we first arrived for her party. My mother held her a moment longer than necessary. I love you, sweet girl, Mom whispered. Happy birthday. Thank you, Grandma, Emma said politely. Then, in a smaller voice, I wish I could have had my strawberry cake. I saw my mother's face crumple slightly at that, saw the flicker of something that might have been guilt or recognition, but it passed quickly, smoothed over by that same practiced neutrality. We drove home in silence, Emma falling asleep in her car seat within minutes, exhausted by the emotional turmoil of her ruined party. James reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Then why do I feel so terrible? I asked, my voice catching. Because you love your family, James replied. Because part of you still hopes they'll change, that they'll see what they're doing. But Melissa, this has been going on for years. Your sister has always been like this, and your parents have always enabled it. Today was just the most blatant example. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing it didn't make it hurt less. When we got home, Emma woke up as I unbuckled her from her car seat. She looked around at our familiar driveway, our small but tidy house, and her lower lip trembled. Can we still have cake? She asked. Even if it's not my special one? My heart broke a little more. Of course, baby. Let's see what we have. Inside, I checked the freezer and found a small store-bought ice cream cake I'd purchased weeks ago as a backup, just in case the homemade one didn't turn out. I'd forgotten about it in all the excitement of making Emma's requested strawberry cake. How about ice cream cake? I suggested. It's not strawberry, but it has your favorite ice cream flavor, vanilla with cookie crumbles. Emma's face brightened slightly. Really? Can we have it now? Absolutely, James said, already getting plates from the cabinet. It's your birthday. We can have cake whenever you want. We sang happy birthday again, just the three of us in our small kitchen, and Emma blew out the hastily placed candles with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She ate her cake quietly, none of the chatter and excitement that usually accompanied her meals. After Emma went to bed, James and I sat together on the couch, the house quiet around us. Your phone's been buzzing, James observed, nodding toward where I'd left it on the coffee table. I picked it up, unsurprised to see multiple messages and missed calls. 3 from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 7 from Rachel. I opened them in order. Mom's messages were predictable. Please call me. Let's work this out. Rachel feels terrible about what happened. Family is too important to let this come between us. The last one made me laugh bitterly. Rachel felt terrible. Not Rachel was sorry. Not Rachel recognized she was wrong. She felt terrible, which probably meant she was upset that I hadn't immediately caved to her demands. Dad's messages were shorter. Call your mother. Don't let this family break apart over cake. Over cake. As if that's what this was about. As if the cake was the problem and not Rachel's entitled behavior. My parents enabling. And 32 years of me being expected to accommodate my sister's every whim. Rachel's messages started angry and devolved from there. Can't believe you embarrassed me in front of Mom and Dad like that. You always have to be so dramatic about everything. Brandon cried the whole way home. Hope you're happy. Mom says you won't answer her calls. Real mature, Melissa. Fine, be that way. Don't expect us at any more of Emma's events if this is how you're going to act. Derek says I'm overreacting, but you know what? Maybe I should have thrown that stupid cake away sooner. It probably tasted terrible anyway. The last message had been sent just 10 minutes ago. Are you really going to throw away our relationship over this? Over Brandon not liking strawberry? You're being absolutely ridiculous. I showed the messages to James, watching his expression darken as he read. Not a single apology, he observed. Not one acknowledgement that she did anything wrong. Just attacks, guilt trips, and blame shifting. That's Rachel, I said tiredly. This is what she does. She creates a problem, gets called out, and then makes herself the victim. And usually I apologize just to keep the peace, even when I didn't do anything wrong. But not this time, James said. It wasn't a question. Not this time. I agreed. I'm done, James. I'm done accommodating her. Done making excuses. Done sacrificing Emma's happiness for Brandon's tantrums. Done being treated like the problematic one for having boundaries. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel. You know what your problem is? You've always been jealous of me, of my life, my family, everything. That's what this is really about. James read it over my shoulder and made a sound of disgust. That's rich coming from the woman who just destroyed a 5-year-old's birthday cake. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I turned off my phone and set it aside. What are you going to do? James asked. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. And I'm not going to expose Emma to this kind of toxic behavior anymore. Your parents aren't going to like that. My parents have spent my entire life prioritizing Rachel's feelings over mine, I said. Maybe it's time they learned that I have limits too, that I won't sacrifice my daughter's well-being to maintain this dysfunctional family dynamic. We sat in silence for a while, James's arm around my shoulders, both of us processing the wreckage of what was supposed to be a happy family celebration. You know what the worst part is? I said eventually. Emma asked me why Aunt Rachel threw her cake away, and I didn't have a good answer, because the truth is too ugly for a 5-year-old to understand, that her aunt values her cousin's preferences over Emma's special day, that her grandparents enable that behavior, that her mother has been conditioned to accept it. But you're breaking that cycle, James pointed out, by standing up to Rachel, by refusing to teach Emma that she should accept being treated as less important than Brandon. That matters, Melissa. That matters a lot. He was right. I knew he was right, but it didn't make the guilt and hurt any less painful. Over the next few days, the calls and messages continued. My mother called every day, sometimes multiple times. My father sent texts asking me to be reasonable. Rachel's messages alternated between angry accusations and passive-aggressive hints that I was destroying our family. But I didn't respond. I needed time and space to think, to process, to figure out what I wanted moving forward. And what I wanted was change. Real change. Not just apologies followed by the same behavior repeated. Not just promises to do better that evaporated the next time Rachel decided Brandon's wants outweighed anyone else's needs. A week after Emma's ruined birthday party, I received a message from my mother. Rachel wants to apologize. Can we all meet for lunch on Saturday? Please, Melissa. Let's work this out. I stared at the message for a long time before showing it to James. What do you think? I asked. I think it depends on what kind of apology Rachel's planning to give, he said. If it's genuine recognition of what she did wrong, that's one thing. If it's just going through the motions to appease your parents and get everyone off her back, that's another. Knowing Rachel, it's probably the latter, I said. Probably, James agreed, but maybe you should hear her out anyway. At least then you'll know where things stand. I thought about it for the rest of the day, weighing the potential outcomes. Finally, that evening, I responded to my mother's message. Lunch on Saturday. But I want you to understand something first. I'm not going to accept a non-apology. I'm not going to pretend this was just a misunderstanding. What Rachel did was wrong, and if she can't genuinely acknowledge that, then we have nothing to discuss. Mom's response came quickly. Thank you, sweetheart. I promise Rachel understands she made a mistake. See you Saturday at noon at Riverside Cafe. I agreed to the time and place, though I had serious doubts about Rachel's supposed understanding. My sister had never been good at genuine apologies. Her usual tactic was to offer a vague, "I'm sorry you felt that way" statement that put the responsibility for being hurt on the other person, rather than accepting responsibility for causing the hurt. Saturday arrived with me feeling anxious and uncertain. James offered to come with me, but I declined. This was something I needed to face alone, though I appreciated his support. I arrived at Riverside Cafe at exactly noon, finding my parents and Rachel already seated at a corner table. Brandon wasn't with them, I noticed. Probably at Derek's parents' house, which seemed strategic. Harder to have a serious conversation about his behavior with him present. Melissa, honey, Mom said, standing to hug me. I returned the embrace stiffly, hyper-aware of Rachel watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. I sat down across from my sister, my parents on either side of the table like referees at a boxing match. Thank you for coming, Dad said, his tone formal. We know this week has been difficult for everyone. It didn't have to be difficult, I said quietly. If Rachel had simply apologized immediately instead of making it worse. Rachel's jaw tightened, but Mom put a hand on her arm. Some silent communication passed between them. Melissa, Rachel began, her voice carefully controlled. I want to apologize for throwing away Emma's cake. That was wrong of me and I shouldn't have done it. I waited, but that seemed to be the extent of her apology. No acknowledgement of why it was wrong. No recognition of the deeper issues her behavior represented. No mention of her insulting messages or her attempts to paint herself as the victim. Is that it? I asked. Rachel's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, is that it? I apologized. What more do you want? I want you to understand what you actually did wrong, I said. Because from where I'm sitting, you're apologizing for the action without understanding the problem. You threw away Emma's birthday cake, yes. But the real issue is that you thought you had the right to do that. That Brandon's preferences should override Emma's on her own birthday. That my time time and effort and Emma's wishes were all less important than avoiding Brandon being disappointed. I said I was sorry, Rachel repeated, her voice rising slightly. I don't know what else you want from me. I want you to actually be sorry, I replied. Not sorry that I made a big deal out of it. Not sorry that it caused a family argument, but genuinely sorry for what you did and why it was wrong. Girls, Mom interjected, let's not turn this into another argument. Rachel apologized. Melissa, can't you accept that and move forward? Forward to what? I asked, looking at my mother. Forward to the next time Rachel decides Brandon's wants are more important than Emma's needs. Forward to the next family event where I'm expected to accommodate and compromise while Rachel faces no consequences for her behavior. That's not fair, Dad said. We're here trying to repair the relationship, and you're attacking Rachel. I'm not attacking her, I said firmly. I'm stating facts. Rachel threw away Emma's birthday cake. When I refused to immediately buy a replacement that Brandon preferred, she called me selfish. She sent me messages blaming me for Brandon crying, insulting the cake I'd made, suggesting I was jealous of her, and threatening to skip Emma's future events. None of that is okay, and a generic apology for the cake throwing doesn't address any of that. Rachel's face flushed. You're being completely unreasonable. I came here to apologize like Mom asked, and you're still not satisfied. What do you want me to do? Get on my knees and beg? I want you to understand why what you did was wrong, I repeated. I want you to acknowledge that Brandon shouldn't always get his way at everyone else's expense. I want you to recognize that Emma matters just as much as Brandon, and I want you to actually feel remorse for hurting your niece on her birthday, not just annoyance that it caused family drama. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Rachel stared at me with barely contained anger. My parents looked between us, clearly hoping one of us would back down, but I was done backing down. The waitress appeared at that moment, breaking the tense silence to take our orders. We all mechanically requested drinks and food, the normalcy of the action a stark contrast to the tension crackling across the table. After she left, Rachel leaned back in her chair, arms crossed over her chest in that defensive posture I knew all too well. You know what? Rachel said, her voice tight. Maybe I don't feel as sorry as you want me to. Maybe I think you're blowing this whole thing way out of proportion. It was a cake, Melissa. A cake. Kids forget about that stuff in a week. Emma hasn't forgotten, I said quietly. She asked me 3 times this week why Aunt Rachel threw her cake away. She wanted to know if Brandon doesn't like her, if she did something wrong. I saw something flicker across Rachel's face. Might have been guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. That's not my fault, Rachel said. That's you making her feel bad about it by dwelling on it. If you'd just dropped the whole thing, Emma would have moved on by now. So it's my fault Emma is hurt? I asked, feeling my anger rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Not your fault for throwing away her cake? My fault for not teaching her to accept being treated like she doesn't matter? Oh my God, you're so dramatic, Rachel exploded. She's 5. She doesn't understand any of this. You're the one putting these ideas in her head, making her think her aunt hates her or whatever nonsense you've been feeding her. I haven't been feeding her anything, I shot back. I told her that sometimes grown-ups make bad choices. That's it. The rest is her own observation of what you did. Girls, please, Mom interjected again, her voice strained. Lower your voices. People are staring. I glanced around the cafe and realized my mother was right. Several nearby tables had turned their attention our way. I took a deep breath, trying to regain control of my emotions. Let me ask you something, Rachel, I said, keeping my voice level. If the situation were reversed, if I had thrown away Brandon's birthday cake because Emma didn't like the flavor and demanded you buy a different one, what would you have done? Rachel's expression turned smug. That would never happen because you're not that inconsiderate. But if it did, I pressed. Hypothetically, what would you do? She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the question. I don't know. It's a hypothetical. Would you have gone to buy a new cake? I asked. Would you have accepted my behavior as just looking out for Emma? Would you have forgiven me within a week? Rachel's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, I said. You know exactly how wrong it was. You just don't want to admit it, because then you'd have to acknowledge that you prioritize Brandon over everyone else, including your own niece, and that Mom and Dad enable that behavior. Don't bring us into this, Dad said sharply. We're trying to help you girls work through this. You're trying to get me to accept Rachel's non-apology so everything can go back to normal, I corrected. That's not the same thing as actually addressing the problem. Our food arrived, providing another temporary reprieve from the confrontation. We ate in strained silence for several minutes before Mom tried again. Melissa, honey, I know you're hurt. I understand that. But is this really worth damaging your relationship with your sister? With us? Over a cake? Mom, it's not about the cake, I said, setting down my fork. It's about a lifetime of this pattern. Rachel wants something. Rachel gets it. Rachel makes a mess. Someone else cleans it up. Rachel hurts someone. That person is expected to just get over it. When does it end? When does she face actual consequences for her behavior? What consequences do you want? Dad asked. What would satisfy you? Acknowledgement, I said simply. Real acknowledgement that what she did was wrong, not just that it upset me. Recognition that Brandon can't always get his way. Some indication that this won't happen again because Rachel actually understands the problem, not just because she wants to avoid family drama. I already apologized, Rachel muttered, pushing food around her plate. I don't know what else you want. An actual apology, I said. One that shows you understand what you did and why it was hurtful. Not just, I'm sorry for throwing the cake away, but I'm sorry I dismissed Emma's wishes. I'm sorry I expected you to buy a replacement to suit Brandon's preferences. I'm sorry I sent you those horrible messages afterward. And I'm going to work on not prioritizing Brandon's wants over other people's needs. Rachel's face flushed dark red. You want me to sit here and list everything I supposedly did wrong to humiliate humiliate myself? I want you to be honest, I said, with yourself and with me. Because if you can't even acknowledge what you did, how can I trust that it won't happen again? How can I expose Emma to that kind of treatment? So what? You're going to keep Emma away from me? Rachel demanded. From Brandon? From her own family? I'm going to protect my daughter from toxic behavior, I said firmly. If that means limiting contact with family members who make her feel unimportant, then yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The declaration hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown. My parents looked shocked, as if the idea that I might actually enforce boundaries had never occurred to them. Melissa, you can't be serious, Mom said, her voice wavering. You can't keep Emma away from her aunt and cousin. That's not right. What's not right is expecting Emma to tolerate being treated as less important than Brandon, I countered. What's not right is teaching her that family can hurt her, and she just has to accept it because blood relation means more than respect. Now you're just being vindictive, Rachel accused, using Emma as a weapon against me. I'm being protective, I corrected. There's a difference. If you genuinely apologized, if you showed any real remorse or understanding, if you gave me any reason to believe this behavior would change, we could move forward. But you haven't. You're just going through the motions because Mom asked you to, and you're angry that I'm not immediately accepting it and moving on. Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'm done with this. I tried to apologize. I tried to make things right, but clearly nothing I do will ever be good enough for you, Melissa. You want to be the victim? Fine, be the victim, but don't expect me to keep groveling. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. We all watched her go, the cafe now fully silent as other diners observed our family drama. Melissa, Dad said heavily, was that really necessary? Rachel was trying. She wasn't trying, I said, my voice shaking now that the confrontation had reached its peak. She was performing. There's a difference, and I'm tired of pretending I can't see it. Mom's eyes filled with tears. What do you want us to do? How do we fix this? You can't fix it for me, Mom, I said gently. This is between Rachel and me, but you could stop enabling her. You could stop expecting me to be the one who always compromises. You could stop treating Rachel's feelings as more important than mine. You could actually hold her accountable instead of smoothing everything over. We love you both equally, Dad protested. Do you? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you love Rachel enough to excuse her behavior, but you love me enough to expect me to tolerate it. Those aren't the same thing. I stood up, leaving money on the table for my untouched meal. I need some time, some space, to figure out what kind of relationship I want with a family that treats standing up for myself as a bigger problem than the behavior I'm standing up against. Melissa, please. Mom reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. I love you both, I said, but I love my daughter more, and I won't teach her to accept being treated as less important just to keep the peace. I hope you can understand that. I walked out of the cafe, my legs shaking, my heart pounding. In my car, I sat for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed almost immediately with messages from my mother, but I couldn't bring myself to read them yet. Instead, I drove to the park where James had taken Emma for the afternoon. I found them at the playground, Emma laughing as she went down the slide, James spotting her carefully at the bottom. When Emma saw me, her face lit up. Mommy, watch me. I watched her play, this beautiful, innocent child who deserved to grow up knowing she mattered, that her feelings were important, that she didn't have to accept being treated poorly just because the person doing it was family. James came over, reading my expression. How did it go? About as well as expected, I said. Rachel gave a non-apology, got angry when I didn't immediately accept it, and stormed out. My parents wanted to know what I expect them to do to fix it. And what do you expect? He asked. I don't know anymore, I admitted. I just know I can't go back to how things were. I won't. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone continued to buzz with messages from my family. Mom sent daily texts ranging from pleading to guilt-tripping. Dad's messages were shorter, but carried the same theme. I was being unreasonable. I needed to be the bigger person. Family was more important than pride. Rachel's messages had stopped entirely after the cafe disaster, which was somehow worse than her angry texts. The silence felt ominous, like she was planning something. I found out what she was planning when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Is this Melissa Hart?" A professional-sounding woman asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm a family counselor. Your sister Rachel contacted me about mediating a family dispute. She mentioned that you might be interested in professional help working through some issues between you." I was so stunned it took me a moment to respond. Rachel contacted a family counselor? Yes. She seemed quite concerned about the rift between you and wanted to explore options for reconciliation. She gave me your number and said you might be open to scheduling a joint session. The manipulation was almost impressive. Rachel was positioning herself as the reasonable one seeking professional help while simultaneously controlling the narrative by being the one to contact a counselor first. Did Rachel explain what the dispute was about? I asked carefully. She mentioned something about a disagreement at a family gathering that escalated. She felt that professional mediation might help you both communicate more effectively. A disagreement at a family gathering, I repeated. Did she mention that she threw away my daughter's birthday cake because her son didn't like the flavor? That she demanded I buy a replacement? That when I refused, she called me selfish and sent me insulting messages? There was a pause. Those specific details weren't mentioned. No. She described it as a conflict over different parenting styles and family expectations. Of course she did. Rachel had reframed the entire situation to make it sound like a philosophical disagreement rather than her concrete actions and their consequences. "Ms. Morrison," I said, "I appreciate Rachel reaching out for professional help. That's actually a positive step, but I'm not interested in joint counseling with her right now. If she wants to work on understanding why her behavior was problematic, individual therapy might be better. beneficial, but I'm not ready to sit in a room with her and a mediator who's been given a sanitized version of what happened. I understand, Ms. Morrison said, her tone neutral. Would you like me to contact your sister and relay that? If you want, I said, but I'd also suggest asking her for the complete story of what happened, not just her interpretation of it. After hanging up, I immediately called James at work. Rachel contacted a family counselor, I told him, positioned herself as the reasonable one seeking help for our disagreement. James was quiet for a moment. That's actually pretty clever. Now, if you refuse to go, she can tell everyone you weren't willing to try counseling. Exactly, I said. She's building a narrative where she's done everything possible to reconcile, and I'm the stubborn one refusing to cooperate. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to accept just to make sure the counselor hears both sides, but another part thinks that's exactly what Rachel wants, to force me into a situation where a neutral third party might pressure me to compromise. Would compromising be so bad? James asked gently. If you could get a genuine apology and some changes in behavior? If those were real possibilities? No, I said, but I don't trust that Rachel has actually changed. This feels like another manipulation, another way to control the situation and avoid genuine accountability. That evening, I was proven right. My mother called, her voice bright with forced cheer. Melissa, honey, Rachel told me she contacted a family counselor for you both. Isn't that wonderful? She's really trying to make amends. She contacted a counselor and gave them a version of events that makes this sound like a difference of opinion rather than her concrete actions. I corrected. That's not the same as making amends. But she's trying, Mom insisted. She's taking steps. Doesn't that count for something? It would count for more if the steps were genuine rather than strategic, I said. Did she tell you she described this as a conflict over parenting styles? Not that she threw away Emma's birthday cake, but just that we have different approaches to parenting? Mom was silent for a moment. Well, in a way, it is about parenting styles. How you parent Emma versus how Rachel parents Brandon. No, Mom, I said firmly. It's about Rachel destroying something I made for my daughter's birthday because her son preferred something different. That's not a parenting style. That's a specific action with specific consequences. I just think counseling could help you both understand each other better, Mom said, that leading note back in her voice. Won't you at least try? For family? For family, I repeated. That phrase means I should compromise, should accommodate, should set aside my boundaries. But what does for family mean for Rachel? Does she have to change anything? Does she have to acknowledge anything? Or is for family just code for Melissa should make everyone comfortable again? That's not fair, Mom protested. Isn't it? I asked. Tell me the last time you asked Rachel to do something for family that required her to sacrifice or compromise or admit she was wrong. The silence on the line told me everything I needed to know. I need to go, I said. Emma needs help with her homework. Melissa, wait, but I'd already hung up. James found me sitting on Emma's bed that night after our daughter had fallen asleep. He sat beside me, his presence solid and comforting. I talked to my sister today, he said. My sister-in-law Sarah had become a good friend over the years. She wants you to know she's on your side. She said when she heard what Rachel did, it reminded her of growing up with her entitled cousin. She said standing up to toxic family behavior is one of the hardest things anyone can do. Did she have advice? I asked. She said to trust your instincts, that you know your family better than anyone, and if you think Rachel is manipulating the situation rather than genuinely trying to change, you're probably right. The counselor thing feels like a trap, I admitted. Like Rachel is setting up a situation where either I look unreasonable for refusing, or I go and get pressured to compromise and move on. Then don't go, James said simply. Or if you do go on your terms. Find your own counselor, someone Rachel hasn't already spoken to, and suggest that instead. It was good advice. The next morning, I researched family therapists in our area, specifically looking for ones who specialized in toxic family dynamics and manipulation. I found Dr. Patricia Wells, whose profile mentioned extensive experience with narcissistic family systems and boundary setting. I called and explained the situation, giving her the full story, not Rachel's sanitized version. Dr. Wells listened without interruption, then said, Ms. Hart, based on what you've described, I think you'd benefit from individual counseling first to clarify your own boundaries and needs. Then, if you decide joint counseling with your sister would be productive, we can arrange that. But starting with joint sessions when there's such a power imbalance and history of manipulation often reinforces the problematic dynamics rather than addressing them. Her words resonated deeply. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Trust your instincts, Dr. Wells said. They're telling you something important. I scheduled an appointment for the following week. Then I called Ms. Morrison, the counselor Rachel had contacted. Ms. Morrison, this is Melissa Hart. I wanted to let you know that I've decided to start with individual counseling before considering any joint sessions with my sister. I found a therapist who specializes in the kind of family dynamics we're dealing with. I understand, Ms. Morrison said. That's actually a very healthy approach. May I ask what made you decide on individual sessions first? Because the counselor I've chosen asked me for the complete story, including specific actions and their consequences, rather than accepting a vague description of a parenting disagreement. That told me she'd help me work through this in a way that addresses the real issues rather than just smoothing over the surface problems. That makes sense, Ms. Morrison said. Would you like me to convey this to your sister? If you want, I said, but I'll be telling her myself as well. After hanging up, I sent a message to Rachel. I heard you contacted a family counselor. I appreciate that you're seeking help. I've also found a counselor, and I'll be starting individual therapy before considering any joint sessions. If you're genuinely interested in addressing these issues, I'd suggest you do individual therapy as well to work on understanding your own behavior patterns. Rachel Rachel's response came within minutes. So now I need therapy? This is ridiculous. I was trying to help and you're making it sound like I'm the crazy one. I didn't respond. Dr. Wells's words echoed in my mind. Trust your instincts. My first session with Dr. Patricia Wells took place on a Thursday afternoon in her office, a quiet space with comfortable chairs and warm lighting that immediately put me at ease. After the initial paperwork and introductions, she asked me to tell her the full story, from childhood through the birthday cake incident and beyond. I talked for nearly 40 minutes, the words pouring out in a way they hadn't with anyone except James. Dr. Wells listened intently, occasionally taking notes, but mostly just giving me space to speak. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment before saying, "Melissa, what you've described is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic. Your sister has been positioned as the golden child, someone whose needs and wants are prioritized, whose mistakes are minimized or excused. You've been cast as the scapegoat, the one who's expected to be reasonable, to accommodate, to maintain family harmony regardless of personal cost." Hearing it stated so clinically, so matter-of-factly, was both validating and painful. The birthday cake incident wasn't an isolated event, Dr. Wells continued. It was the culmination of a lifetime of this pattern. Your sister felt entitled to destroy something important to your daughter because, in her worldview, shaped by years of family dynamics, her son's preferences do matter more than your daughter's needs, and your parents' response reinforced that belief. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "How do I fix this?" "You don't fix it," Dr. Wells said gently. "You can't fix other people, Melissa. You can only decide what you're willing to accept and what boundaries you need to protect yourself and your daughter." Over the next few weeks, I met with Dr. Wells regularly. We worked on identifying toxic patterns, understanding my own role in enabling them by always being the accommodator, and developing strategies for setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. Each session left me feeling simultaneously empowered and grieving for the family I'd always wished I had, but never would. Meanwhile, the family drama continued to escalate. Rachel, upset that I hadn't accepted her counselor recommendation, began posting vague social media updates about people who claim to care about family but won't even try to work things out, and how sometimes the people you think you know turn out to be completely different. My mother called constantly, her messages growing increasingly desperate. "Melissa, please, you're tearing this family apart. Rachel is devastated. Your father's blood pressure is acting up from the stress. Can't you just talk to her? Can't you try?" What they didn't understand, what they refused to understand, was that I had been trying for 32 years. I'd been trying to earn equal consideration, equal respect, equal love, and it had never worked because the problem wasn't my effort. The problem was the family system that required me to fail so Rachel could succeed. 3 weeks into my therapy, something unexpected happened. I received a message from Derek, Rachel's husband. "Melissa, this is Derek. I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. Can we meet for coffee? There's something I need to tell you." I stared at the message, suspicious but curious. Derek and I had always been cordial, but never close. He mostly stayed in the background during family gatherings, a quiet presence while Rachel dominated conversations. I couldn't imagine what he wanted to discuss privately. After consulting with Dr. Wells in our next session, I agreed to meet Derek at a neutral location, a coffee shop near my work. I arrived early, choosing a table with a clear view of the door, and waited. Derek arrived exactly on time, looking tired and uncomfortable. He ordered a coffee and sat down across from me, fidgeting with his cup. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm curious why you wanted to meet," I admitted. "We've never really talked one-on-one before." Derek took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to know that Rachel doesn't know I'm here. If she found out, there would be hell to pay." That got my attention. "Okay, what Rachel did at Emma's birthday party," Derek began, his voice low, "throwing away the cake and demanding you buy another one. That wasn't an isolated incident. That's how she treats people, all the time. I see it with Brandon, with service workers, with anyone she thinks should cater to her preferences." I waited, sensing there was more. "I've been living with Rachel's entitled behavior for 9 years, Derek continued, his hands clenching around his coffee cup. "I've watched her throw tantrums when things don't go her way. I've seen her berate waiters for minor mistakes. I've witnessed her teaching Brandon that he deserves whatever he wants, whenever he wants it, and I've been too much of a coward to stand up to her because when I do, she makes my life miserable." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I thought I knew. "Because I'm done," Derek said, his voice carrying a weight of exhausted finality. "I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done watching my son turn into a smaller version of Rachel's worst qualities. I'm done being complicit in behavior I know is wrong, and I'm done watching Rachel manipulate and gaslight people, including you and your family." He pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. "I want to show you something. After the birthday party, after you left, Rachel was furious. She spent the entire drive home ranting about how dramatic you were, how you always make everything about yourself, how you think you're so much better than everyone else." Derek showed me his phone. It was a recording, the audio clearly Rachel's voice, so I couldn't see the video. "I started recording her because I needed proof," Derek explained. "Proof that I'm not crazy, that her behavior is as bad as I think it is. Listen." He played the recording. Rachel's voice came through clearly, shrill with anger. "I can't believe Melissa had the nerve to make such a big deal out of a stupid cake. Like Emma's birthday is so special. Like Brandon's feelings don't matter at all. I should have thrown that hideous cake away weeks ago when she was showing me pictures of it. Strawberry is such a cheap trailer trash flavor anyway." My stomach clenched at hearing my sister's voice, at the venom in her tone when talking about my daughter's birthday. The recording continued, and Mom and Dad just sat there like idiots, letting her attack me. "After everything I do for them, all the time I spend with them, them, they couldn't even defend me properly. Next time they need something, they can call Melissa and see how helpful she is. There's more, Derek said quietly, fast-forwarding through the recording. This part is from later that night after Brandon went to bed. Rachel's voice again. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what Melissa did. I'm going to tell the whole family how she ruined Emma's birthday party by being petty and jealous. I'm going to tell them how she's been treating Brandon badly for years, making him feel unwelcome. By the time I'm done, Melissa won't have any family left except her precious James and Emma. The recording stopped. I sat in stunned silence, processing what I'd just heard. It was one thing to suspect Rachel's true feelings, another to hear them stated so explicitly. There are more recordings, Derek said. Hours of them. Rachel talking about you, about your parents, about her plans to isolate you from the family. She's been working on this for weeks, crafting a narrative where she's the victim and you're the villain. Why are you showing me this? I asked, my voice shaking. Because I can't be part of it anymore, Derek said. I can't watch her destroy your relationship with your family based on lies. I can't let Brandon grow up thinking this behavior is normal. And honestly, I can't stay married to someone capable of this level of manipulation. I stared at him. You're leaving Rachel? I'm planning to, yes, Derek confirmed. I've been consulting with a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce and seeking primary custody of Brandon. I want to use these recordings as evidence of Rachel's behavior and how it's affecting our son. But I wanted you to hear them first because you deserve to know what you're really dealing with. The implications of what Derek was saying crashed over me. Rachel's marriage was ending. My nephew would go through a divorce. The family dynamics were about to explode in ways that would make the birthday cake incident look like a minor disagreement. Have you told Rachel you're planning this? I asked. Not yet, Derek said. My lawyer advised me to have everything in order first. But Melissa, I need you to understand something. When this happens, Rachel is going to go nuclear. She's going to blame you. She's going to tell everyone that your refusal to forgive her over the cake incident destroyed her marriage. She's going to play the victim so hard that some people will absolutely believe her. I know, I said quietly. That's what she does. But you have this now, Derek said, gesturing to his phone. You have proof of what she's really saying, what she's really planning. If you need it, if she pushes too hard, you can use it to defend yourself. I don't want to use it, I said immediately. Derek, this is between you and Rachel. Your marriage, your divorce. I don't want to be dragged into it. You're already in it, Derek said gently. Rachel made sure of that when she decided you'd be her scapegoat for everything wrong in her life. I'm just giving you the tools to protect yourself. We talked for another hour. Derek explained how Rachel's behavior had deteriorated over the years, how she'd become increasingly entitled and demanding, how she'd isolated him from his own family and friends by making any relationship that didn't revolve around her preferences too difficult to maintain. The birthday cake thing was my breaking point, Derek admitted. Watching her destroy something a 5-year-old had been excited about, just because Brandon wanted chocolate, and then seeing her try to paint you as the villain for not immediately catering to his tantrum. I couldn't unsee it anymore. Couldn't pretend it was normal or that she was just being a protective mother. What about Brandon? I asked, thinking of my nephew and how this would affect him. Derek's expression softened with pain. Brandon is 7. He's been raised to think he's the center of the universe, that his wants override everyone else's needs. If I don't intervene now, he's going to turn into an adult version of Rachel, entitled, manipulative, unable to handle disappointment or criticism. I have to try to break that cycle while there's still time. That's going to be hard, I said. Rachel has primary influence right now, which is why I'm fighting for custody, Derek said. I have documentation of her behavior, the recordings, testimony from teachers who've expressed concern about Brandon's classroom behavior. It's not a guaranteed win, but I have to try. We parted with an understanding that Derek would keep me informed of major developments, but that I wouldn't share the recordings unless Rachel's manipulation escalated to the point where I had no choice. That night, I told James everything. He listened, his expression growing darker as I relayed Derek's revelations and played him portions of the recordings. That's worse than I thought, James said when I finished. I knew Rachel was manipulative, but this level of calculated deception, the way she's planning to destroy your family relationships, that's sociopathic behavior, Melissa. I know, I said, feeling nauseous. And the worst part is, I'm not even surprised. Shocked to hear it stated so explicitly, yes, but deep down I knew. I've always known that Rachel's love was conditional, that she was capable of this kind of betrayal. I just didn't want to believe it. What are you going to do? James asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. Dr. Wells said I should focus on my own boundaries and decisions, not on controlling Rachel's behavior. But Derek's right. When the divorce happens, Rachel is going to blame me. She's going to tell everyone I destroyed her marriage by refusing to forgive her over the cake. Let her, James said firmly. Anyone who knows you, anyone who's paying attention, will see through it. And if they don't, if they choose to believe Rachel's version of events without question, then they're not people you need in your life anyway. It was harsh, but true. The coming weeks would reveal who in my family was willing to see reality and who preferred Rachel's comfortable lies. 2 days after my meeting with Derek, I had my regular session with Dr. Wells. I told her about Derek's recordings and his planned divorce. How do you feel about this information? Dr. Wells asked. Validated, I said immediately, and guilty for feeling validated. Derek's marriage is ending. Brandon's going through a divorce. Those are tragic things. But hearing confirmation that I'm not crazy, that Rachel really is as manipulative as I thought she was, that's almost a relief. That's a normal response, Dr. Wells assured me. You've been gaslit for years, told that you're too sensitive, too dramatic, making mountains out of molehills. Having concrete proof that your perceptions were accurate is validating. The guilt you feel is also normal because you're a person with empathy who doesn't want others to suffer, even when their suffering isn't your responsibility. Rachel is going to make this my fault, I said. Even though her marriage problems have nothing to do with me, she's going to find a way to blame me. Probably, Dr. Wells agreed. Narcissistic personalities need scapegoats to avoid confronting their own behavior. When something goes wrong in Rachel's life, she can't accept responsibility, so she projects it onto someone else. You've been filling that role for a long time. How do I protect myself when she starts the smear campaign? I asked. By maintaining your boundaries, Dr. Wells said. By not engaging with her narratives or trying to defend yourself to people who've already decided to believe her. By surrounding yourself with people who know your character and trusting them to see through the manipulation. And if necessary, by using the evidence Derek gave you to set the record straight with people who matter to you. That weekend, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was strained, almost frantic. Melissa, I just got off the phone with Rachel. She's devastated. Derek asked her for a divorce. Did you know about this? My heart sank. It was happening faster than I'd anticipated. I knew Derek was unhappy, I said carefully. Technically true. But their marriage isn't my business, Mom. Rachel says you put ideas in Derek's head. Mom continued. She says you've been poisoning him against her, telling him lies about her behavior. There it was, Rachel's narrative, already in motion. Mom, I've barely spoken to Derek in years, I said. The idea that I somehow influenced his decision to divorce Rachel is absurd. Have you considered that maybe Derek has his own reasons? That maybe Rachel's behavior in their marriage is the problem? Rachel's been a wonderful wife and mother, Mom said automatically. She's dedicated her life to that family. Derek's making a terrible mistake, and if you had any influence in this decision, you need to tell him to reconsider. I had no influence, I repeated. And even if I did, Derek's an adult capable of making his own decisions about his marriage. This isn't about me, Mom. Rachel thinks it is, Mom said. She thinks you've been trying to destroy her life ever since the birthday party incident. That you've been so angry about the cake that you're deliberately trying to tear her family apart. The logic was so twisted, so divorced from reality that I almost laughed. Almost. Mom, listen to yourself, I said. You're suggesting that I, because of a birthday cake, somehow convinced Derek to divorce Rachel. Does that sound reasonable to you? Does it make more sense than the possibility that Derek has legitimate concerns about Rachel's behavior and their marriage? I don't know what to believe anymore, Mom said, and she sounded genuinely distressed. My family is falling apart. You and Rachel aren't speaking. Now Rachel's marriage is ending. Your father's health is suffering from the stress. How much more damage has to happen before you're willing to forgive and move forward? I need to go, I said, unable to continue the conversation. Give my best to Dad. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. James found me sitting on our back porch, staring at nothing. Your mom called? Rachel's already spinning the divorce as my fault, I said, telling Mom I poisoned Derek against her, that I'm deliberately trying to destroy her life. And your mom believes it? I think Mom wants to believe whatever narrative makes this situation less complicated, I said. If I'm the villain, then there's a clear solution. I apologize, forgive Rachel, and everything goes back to normal. If Rachel's behavior is actually the problem, then Mom has to confront some uncomfortable truths about how she's enabled that behavior for decades. So what now? James asked. Now we wait, I said. Wait for the divorce to proceed. Wait for Rachel's campaign to intensify. Wait to see who in the family believes her narrative and who's willing to question it. And in the meantime, I focus on what I can control, I said. My own boundaries, my own family. Making sure Emma grows up knowing she deserves respect and doesn't have to tolerate toxic behavior just because it comes from family. The waiting didn't last long. 3 days later, Rachel made her move. She posted on social media a long, emotional statement about betrayal, family, and standing up to toxic people. She never mentioned me by name, but the implications were clear to anyone who knew our family situation. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Rachel's post began. I've spent weeks trying to reconcile with a family member who decided that her pride was more important than family unity. I apologized. I sought counseling. I tried everything to make amends for a minor mistake at a family gathering. But some people are more interested in playing the victim than in forgiveness and healing. The post continued, detailing a version of events so distorted from reality that I barely recognized the situation she was describing. According to Rachel, she'd accidentally upset me at Emma's party, had immediately apologized, and I'd refused to accept it out of jealousy over her successful life. She claimed I'd then spread lies about her to her husband, deliberately trying to destroy her marriage. Now my family is being torn apart, the post concluded, because one person couldn't let go of a grudge. I'm heartbroken, but I'm choosing to move forward with the people who truly love me and understand that forgiveness is essential to family bonds. To those who've supported me through this nightmare, thank you. Your love sustains me. The post had dozens of comments within hours. Relatives I barely knew were expressing their support for Rachel, their condemnation of unnamed toxic family members. Several people I'd considered friends were among the commenters, clearly believing Rachel's narrative without question. But there were also others, people who commented privately or sent direct messages questioning the story. My Aunt Judith sent me a text. I read Rachel's post. Something doesn't sit right about it. Want to tell me your side? I spent the evening responding to messages from people who wanted the truth, carefully explaining what had actually happened without dragging Derek's divorce into it. With each person who believed me, I felt a small measure of validation. And with each person who clearly sided with Rachel without asking questions, I felt a painful but necessary clarity about who actually valued truth over comfortable narratives. The battle lines were being drawn. The family was fracturing along fault lines that had probably always existed, but had been hidden under a veneer of forced harmony, and I was standing my ground. ground, finally refusing to be the one who accommodated, who bent, who sacrificed my dignity and my daughter's well-being for the illusion of family unity. Dr. Wells had warned me this would be hard. She'd warned me that standing up to toxic family dynamics often meant losing relationships, at least temporarily. But she'd also assured me that the relationships we're keeping would survive, and the ones that didn't survive probably weren't built on genuine mutual respect anyway. As I read through Rachel's social media post one more time, noting the lies and distortions and strategic omissions, I made a decision. I wouldn't respond publicly, I wouldn't engage in a social media war, but I would protect the truth with people who mattered, and I would hold firm to my boundaries regardless of how uncomfortable that made others. Rachel had thrown down the gauntlet. Now it was time to see who in my family was willing to stand up to her golden child status and who would remain complicit in her manipulation. The morning after Rachel's social media post, I woke to find my phone buzzing with notifications. More comments on Rachel's post, more messages from relatives asking what was really going on, and 3 missed calls from my mother. I silenced my phone and made breakfast for Emma, determined to maintain normalcy for my daughter despite the chaos unfolding. Emma sat at the kitchen table, carefully spreading peanut butter on her toast when she asked, "Mommy, are we still going to see Grandma and Grandpa for Thanksgiving?" Thanksgiving was 6 weeks away. In the whirlwind of the past month, I hadn't even thought about the upcoming holiday. "I don't know yet, sweetheart," I said honestly. "We'll figure it out." "Because of Aunt Rachel?" Emma asked, her voice small. I knelt beside her chair. "Baby, the grown-up problems between Aunt Rachel and me have nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults have disagreements and we need time to work through them." "But she threw my cake away," Emma said, her eyes filling with tears. "She said it was gross." My heart clenched. "I know, honey, and that was very wrong of her. That's why Mommy is standing up and saying that behavior isn't okay." "Is that why everyone is fighting?" "No one is fighting because of you or your cake," I assured her, though the explanation felt inadequate. How could I explain to a 5-year-old that the cake was just the final straw in a lifetime of toxic family dynamics? After dropping Emma at kindergarten, I finally called my mother back. "Melissa, thank God," Mom said when she answered. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. Have you seen Rachel's post?" "I've seen it," I said flatly. "Well, aren't you going to respond? Aren't you going to set the record straight? She's telling everyone you destroyed her marriage." "I'm not getting into a public argument on social media, Mom," I said. "Anyone who knows me knows that's not what happened. Anyone who believes Rachel's version without asking questions isn't someone whose opinion I'm concerned about." "But people are talking," Mom insisted. "Your Aunt Carol called me last night asking if it was true that you'd been spreading lies about Rachel. Your cousin Beth said she can't believe you'd be so vindictive. You need to defend yourself." "I've told the truth to people who asked me directly," I said. "That's all I'm going to do. If Rachel wants to lie on social media to make herself look like a victim, that's her choice. But I'm not participating in that circus." "Melissa, please," Mom's voice cracked. "This is tearing the family apart. Can't you just apologize publicly? Just say you're sorry for your part in this, even if you don't mean it, just to make peace?" And there it was again, the familiar request to sacrifice my truth, my dignity, my boundaries for the sake of peace, to be the one who accommodates so everyone else can be comfortable. "No, Mom," I said firmly. "I won't apologize for things I didn't do. I won't lie to protect Rachel from the consequences of her own behavior. And I won't teach my daughter that maintaining family harmony is more important than standing up for yourself. You're being incredibly selfish," Mom said, her voice hardening. "Your sister's marriage is falling apart. Your father is having chest pains from stress. The whole family is divided, all because you couldn't forgive Rachel for one mistake." "One mistake," I repeated. "Mom, have you read Derek's divorce filing?" There was a pause. "What? No. Why would I?" "Because it's public record," I said. "And if you read it, you'd see that Derek is citing years of emotional abuse, financial irresponsibility, and concerns about Rachel's impact on Brandon's development. Their marriage isn't ending because of me or a birthday cake. It's ending because Derek finally couldn't tolerate Rachel's behavior anymore. Rachel would never abuse anyone," Mom said automatically. "Derek's obviously been influenced by someone. By you." "I barely speak to Derek," I said, exhausted by the circular logic. "But believe what you want, Mom. I'm not going to keep defending myself against accusations that don't make sense." "Fine," Mom said coldly. "But don't expect us at Christmas this year. Your father and I will be spending it with Rachel and Brandon. She needs our support during this difficult time." The implication was clear. Choose Rachel or lose your parents. "I understand," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "I hope you all have a nice holiday." I hung up before she could respond. For a moment, I sat in my car in the parking lot of Emma's school, processing what had just happened. My parents had chosen sides, and they hadn't chosen mine. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But underneath the pain was something else. Relief. Relief that the pretense was finally over. Relief that I no longer had to perform the role of the accommodating daughter who pretended everything was fine. Relief that the truth was finally visible, even if only to me. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Derek. "Melissa, I need to warn you about something," he said without preamble. "Rachel found out I've been documenting her behavior. She went through my phone last night while I was sleeping and saw the recordings." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "She lost it," Derek said. "Completely lost it. Threw things, screamed, threatened to make sure I never see Brandon again. Then she called her lawyer and told him I'd been illegally recording her without consent." "Is that true? Was it illegal?" "In our state, only one party needs to consent to a recording," Derek explained. "I was present for all the recordings, so they're legal. But Rachel is trying to use it as evidence that I'm unstable and manipulative. Her lawyer is filing an emergency motion to prevent me from removing Brandon from Rachel's care." "I'm so sorry," I said, feeling guilty even though I knew logically this this wasn't my fault. Is there anything I can do? Actually, yes, Derek said. My lawyer wants to depose you to get your account of the birthday party incident and Rachel's behavior toward you and Emma. It could help establish a pattern of entitled behavior that affects Brandon. I hesitated. Getting formally involved in Derek and Rachel's divorce would escalate the family drama to a whole new level. But Derek had given me those recordings, had warned me about Rachel's plans, had stood up when no one else in the family would. I'll do it, I said. When does your lawyer need me? Next week, if possible, Derek said. Melissa, I know this is asking a lot. I know it's going to make things harder for you with your family, but Brandon needs this. He needs at least one parent modeling healthy boundaries and appropriate behavior. I understand, I said. Send me the details. After hanging up, I immediately called Dr. Wells for an emergency session. She had an opening that evening, and I took it greatly. Testifying in Derek's divorce case is a big step, Dr. Wells observed after I explained the situation. How do you feel about it? Terrified, I admitted, but also like it's the right thing to do. Derek stood up for the truth when no one else would. Brandon deserves better than growing up thinking Rachel's behavior is normal. And maybe, just maybe, if I testify about what I witnessed, it'll help. Are you prepared for the fallout? Dr. Wells asked gently. Because Rachel will absolutely use this as further evidence that you're trying to destroy her life. Your parents may become even more entrenched in supporting her. Other family members who are currently neutral may take sides. I know, I said. But Dr. Wells, if I don't stand up now, when will I? How many more people need to be hurt by Rachel's behavior before someone says enough? Emma, Brandon, Derek, they all deserve to have someone willing to tell the truth, even when it's hard. Dr. Wells smiled. You've come a long way from the woman who walked into my office afraid to set any boundaries at all. I had a good teacher, I said. Over the next week, I prepared for my deposition. Derek's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, walked me through what to expect and what questions she'd be asking. She explained that Rachel's lawyer would also be present and would likely try to discredit my testimony or paint me as biased. Just tell the truth, Patricia advised. Stick to specific incidents and facts. Don't speculate about Rachel's motivations or emotions. Just describe what you witnessed and how it affected you and your daughter. The deposition took place in Patricia's office, a sterile conference room with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Rachel's lawyer, a man named Robert Hastings, looked at me with obvious disdain from the moment I walked in. Patricia started with basic questions, establishing my relationship to Rachel and Derek, how long I'd known them, and the general family dynamics. Then she moved to specific incidents. Can you describe what happened at your daughter Emma's 5th birthday party? Patricia asked. I took a deep breath and recounted the events, sticking to facts. The strawberry cake Emma had requested, Rachel throwing it in the trash, her demand that I buy a chocolate cake for Brandon, my refusal, and her response. How did this incident affect your daughter? Patricia asked. Emma cried, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion I felt remembering. She asked me why Aunt Rachel threw her special cake away. She wanted to know if she'd done something wrong, if Brandon didn't like her. In the weeks since, she's mentioned it multiple times, asking why her aunt would do that. Robert Hastings jumped in. Ms. Hart, isn't it true that you've had a contentious relationship with my client for years? That you've been jealous of her success and her close relationship with your parents? I looked at him calmly. No, that's not true. I've had a relationship with Rachel where I was expected to accommodate her preferences and needs, often at the expense of my own. That's different from jealousy. But you refused to simply buy another cake to make a child happy, Hastings pressed. Doesn't that seem petty? It would have been petty if I'd refused to feed Brandon, I countered. But refusing to reward his tantrum by buying the exact cake he demanded after his mother destroyed my daughter's birthday cake, that's called setting boundaries and teaching children that they can't always have their way. Patricia smiled slightly. Hastings frowned. Let's talk about these recordings Mr. Harper claims to have, Hastings continued. Did you encourage him to make them? Did you suggest he document my client's behavior? No, I said. I didn't know about the recordings until Derek chose to share them with me. He made that decision independently. But he played them for you, Hastings said. You listened to private conversations between my client and her husband. Derek played excerpts for me. Yes, I confirmed. Excerpts where Rachel discussed her plans to manipulate the family narrative and isolate me from relatives. Allegedly, Hastings corrected. You only have Mr. Harper's word that those recordings are authentic and unedited. I recognized Rachel's voice, I said, and the sentiments expressed matched behavior I'd observed from her for 32 years. The deposition continued for 2 more hours, Hastings trying various angles to discredit my testimony, while Patricia guided me back to factual accounts of Rachel's behavior. By the end, I felt emotionally exhausted, but also strangely liberated. I'd told the truth under oath. Whatever happened next, I'd stood up for what was right. 3 days after my deposition, Rachel made another social media post. I've just learned that a family member gave a deposition in my divorce case, spreading lies and trying to take my son away from me. This person, who I've loved and supported my entire life, is so consumed by jealousy and hatred that she's willing to destroy my family. I'm heartbroken but determined to fight for my child. To everyone supporting me, thank you. Your prayers and love give me strength to face this betrayal. The comments section exploded. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were expressing shock and outrage. Several called me directly, demanding to know how I could betray my own sister. Others sent messages of support, saying they'd suspected Rachel's manipulation for years and were glad someone finally stood up to it. My mother called, her voice shaking with fury. How could you, Melissa? How could you testify against your own sister? Try to take Brandon away from her? I testified truthfully about what I witnessed, I said. That's not betrayal. betrayal, Mom. That's standing up for what's right, and I'm not trying to take Brandon away. Derek is fighting for custody because he's concerned about Rachel's behavior and its impact on their son. This isn't about me. Everything is about you, Mom shouted. You're making yourself the center of this drama, playing the victim, destroying Rachel's life because she threw away a cake. A cake, Melissa? Is that really worth destroying your sister's family? It was never about the cake, I said tiredly. The cake was just the moment when I finally couldn't pretend anymore. When I couldn't keep accommodating and sacrificing and accepting being treated as less important than Rachel. But you've never understood that, have you, Mom? You've never wanted to understand it because acknowledging it would mean confronting your own role in creating this dynamic. Don't you dare blame me for your vendetta against your sister, Mom hissed. I've been a good mother to both of you. Have you? I asked. Because a good mother would have taught both daughters to respect each other, would have held both daughters accountable for their behavior, would have protected both granddaughters from being hurt. But you only protected Rachel, only defended Rachel, only made excuses for Rachel. And now you're shocked that the daughter you never protected is finally protecting herself. I don't have to listen to this, Mom said. Don't bother calling for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Don't expect any gifts for Emma. As far as your father and I are concerned, you've chosen your path. Now live with it. She hung up before I could respond. I sat holding the phone, processing what had just happened. My mother had just cut me off from the family, all because I refused to enable Rachel's toxic behavior any longer. James found me crying on our bedroom floor an hour later. They chose her. I sobbed into his chest. After everything, after all the years of her manipulation and my accommodation, they chose her. My own parents chose Rachel over me. I know, baby, James said, holding me tight. I'm so sorry. What kind of parents do that? I asked. What kind of parents punish the child who finally stands up for herself instead of the child who's been behaving terribly? The kind who've invested 34 years in a family dynamic that requires Rachel to be special and you to be accommodating, James said gently. Acknowledging that you're right would mean acknowledging they've been wrong for decades. That's too uncomfortable for them to face. He was right. I knew he was right. But it still hurt with a depth I hadn't anticipated. The next few weeks passed in a blur of emotions. Some days I felt strong and certain that I'd made the right choice. Other days I felt overwhelmed by grief and doubt. Dr. Wells helped me process it all, reminding me that setting boundaries often meant losing relationships, at least temporarily, with people who'd benefited from the lack of boundaries. The people you're losing, Dr. Wells pointed out, are people who only valued you when you were willing to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. That's not love, Melissa. That's convenience. Emma noticed the change, of course. She asked why we weren't seeing Grandma and Grandpa anymore, why there were no more playdates with Brandon. Sometimes grown-ups need space from each other, I explained. It doesn't mean we don't love each other. It just means we need time apart to work through some problems. Like time out? Emma asked. Exactly like time out, I agreed, grateful for her child's logic that made complex adult dysfunction comprehensible. James's parents, bless them, stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. They started coming for weekly dinners, taking Emma to the park, filling the grandmother-shaped hole in my daughter's life. When I thanked them, James's mother hugged me tight. Family isn't just blood, she said. It's the people who show up, who support you, who love you even when it's hard. You've always been our daughter, Melissa. Now you're just getting the full parent treatment. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I received a certified letter. It was from Patricia Chen, Derek's lawyer, informing me that Rachel had filed a restraining order request against me, claiming I was harassing her and threatening her safety. This is absurd, I told Patricia over the phone. I haven't contacted Rachel at all. I haven't threatened anyone. I know, Patricia said. It's a legal tactic. She's trying to paint you as unstable to discredit your deposition testimony. We'll fight it, but you need to be prepared for a court hearing. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the week of Thanksgiving. Perfect timing, I thought bitterly. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake wondering how my life had come to this point, where I was going to court to defend myself against false accusations from my own sister, where choosing to protect my daughter and stand up for myself had cost me my entire family of origin. What if I'm wrong? I whispered to James in the darkness. What if I should have just apologized and moved on? What if I've destroyed everything over pride? James turned to face me. Melissa, look at me. You did not destroy anything. Rachel destroyed a 5-year-old's birthday cake and then launched a campaign to make you the villain for not immediately buying a replacement. Your parents enabled that behavior instead of holding her accountable. Derek left his marriage because of years of abuse, not because of you. None of this is your fault. You're just the first person brave enough to say the emperor has no clothes. But it feels like I'm losing everything, I said. You're losing relationships that required you to betray yourself, James corrected. That's not the same as losing everything. You still have me. You have Emma. You have my family. You have friends who've stood by you. You have your integrity and self-respect. Those things matter more than maintaining a dysfunctional family dynamic. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing it didn't make the grief any less painful. The next morning, I dressed carefully for court, choosing professional attire that wouldn't be too formal or too casual. Patricia met me outside the courthouse. Rachel's lawyer is going to argue that your deposition testimony, combined with your refusal to reconcile, constitutes harassment, Patricia explained. We're going to counter with the fact that you've had zero direct contact with Rachel since the birthday party incident, that the only harassment has been you truthfully testifying in a legal proceeding. Inside the courtroom, I saw Rachel for the first time since the disastrous lunch meeting. She sat with Robert Hastings, dressed in a conservative suit, her expression carefully arranged into one of fearful victimhood. My parents sat behind her in the gallery, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders. They didn't look at me when I entered. That somehow hurt more than than anything else that had happened. The hearing began with Rachel taking the stand. She testified, voice trembling, about how I'd become increasingly hostile and threatening since the birthday party incident. She claimed I'd sent her harassing messages, though she conveniently couldn't produce any. She said I'd turned Derek against her, ruined her marriage, and was now trying to take her son away. I'm terrified, Rachel said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My own sister has become someone I don't recognize, someone consumed with hatred and jealousy. I just want to protect myself and my son from her vindictiveness. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed it myself. Then it was my turn to testify. Patricia guided me through a factual account of events, emphasizing that I'd had zero contact with Rachel outside of the deposition and the court-ordered lunch meeting. Have you sent any messages to Ms. Harper since the birthday party incident? Patricia asked. No, I said clearly. Have you made any threats against her or her son? Absolutely not. Have you contacted her in any way except through legal proceedings? No. The only contact has been her contacting me or my parents contacting me on her behalf to ask me to apologize. Robert Hastings cross-examined me aggressively, but I stuck to the facts, refusing to be drawn into emotional arguments or speculation. Finally, the judge spoke. Ms. Harper, I've reviewed the evidence presented, and frankly, I don't see any harassment here. Ms. Hart's participation in a legal deposition doesn't constitute harassment. The absence of any documented contact between you two outside of court proceedings contradicts your claims of ongoing harassment. I'm denying the restraining order request. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. However, the judge continued, looking at both of us, I'm going to strongly suggest that you two seek family mediation to address these underlying issues. What I'm seeing here is a family conflict that's escalated unnecessarily and is now taking up court resources. Both of you need to find a way to communicate that doesn't involve litigation. After the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse, breathing in the cold November air, feeling simultaneously victorious and devastated. I'd won. The restraining order had been denied. Rachel's lies had been exposed, at least in this official setting. But my parents still wouldn't look at me. Rachel was already on her phone, no doubt preparing her next social media post about the injustice of the legal system. And I was standing alone, having defended my truth but lost my family in the process. Thanksgiving arrived 4 days after the court hearing. For the first time in my life, I wouldn't be spending it with my parents. Instead, James's family had invited us to their home, a warm and boisterous gathering that felt both comforting and strange. Emma helped James's mother in the kitchen, carefully mashing potatoes under her supervision, while James's father told elaborate stories to anyone who would listen. James's sister Sarah pulled me aside during the meal preparation. How are you really doing? She asked, her voice gentle. I don't know, I admitted. Some moments I feel strong and certain I made the right choice. Other moments I feel like I've destroyed everything over stubbornness. You didn't destroy anything, Sarah said firmly. You set boundaries. You protected your daughter. You refused to enable toxic behavior. Those are good things, Melissa, even when they're hard things. My mother said I was choosing pride over family, I said quietly. Your mother is choosing comfort over truth, Sarah countered. There's a difference. She'd rather you swallow your pain and pretend everything is fine than confront the fact that she's enabled Rachel's behavior for 34 years. That's on her, not you. During dinner, surrounded by James's family and their genuine warmth, I felt something shift inside me. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Laughter without edge. Conversations without hidden agendas. Love without conditions. Emma sat between James's parents, chattering happily about her kindergarten play and her new favorite book. She'd asked about Grandma and Grandpa that morning, but she wasn't crying. She wasn't traumatized. She was resilient in that remarkable way children can be when the adults around them provide stability and love. After dinner, while Emma played with Sarah's kids in the living room, I helped clear the table. James's mother found me alone in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. I want to tell you something, she said. When James first brought you home to meet us, I could see how you tried so hard to please everyone, to anticipate what people wanted, to make yourself small to avoid causing any disruption. It made me sad, seeing someone so clearly trained to believe their own needs didn't matter. I looked at her, surprised by this observation. But over the years, she continued, I've watched you grow stronger. I've watched you build confidence in your career, in your marriage, in your parenting. And now I'm watching you do the hardest thing of all, standing up to the family that taught you to stay small. I'm proud of you, Melissa. I know your own mother should be saying this, but since she's not, I will. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself and your daughter. That takes incredible courage. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. James's mother pulled me into a hug, and I sobbed into her shoulder, releasing weeks of pent-up grief and fear and doubt. You're going to be okay, she whispered. It doesn't feel like it now, but you are. You've built a life with people who truly love you. That's more valuable than maintaining relationships with people who only love you when you're convenient. The weekend after Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected email from my Aunt Judith, my father's sister. The subject line read, I owe you an apology. I opened it hesitantly. Dear Melissa, I've been watching this family drama unfold from the sidelines, and I'm ashamed to say I initially believed Rachel's version of events. She's always been so good at presenting herself as the reasonable one, the victim of other people's unreasonableness. But something about the restraining order hearing bothered me, so I started asking questions, real questions, not just accepting the narrative I was being fed. I talked to Derek privately. I talked to several people who were at Emma's birthday party. I even went back through years of family gatherings and really paid attention to the patterns I'd been ignoring ignoring. Melissa, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for not seeing sooner how Rachel has been treating you. I'm sorry for not standing up for you when you were being blamed for her divorce. I'm sorry for not questioning your parents' obvious favoritism. I'm sorry for being another person who expected you to just keep accommodating and compromising while Rachel faced no consequences. I can't undo the past, but I can tell you the truth now. You did nothing wrong. Rachel threw away your daughter's birthday cake, and everything that happened after that was a consequence of her own behavior, not yours. Derek's divorce is based on years of issues in his marriage, not anything you did or said. Your parents have enabled Rachel's entitled behavior since childhood, and they're continuing that pattern now. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know my belated realization doesn't give you back the family relationships you've lost, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family sees the truth and is willing to say it out loud. If you're willing, I'd like to have coffee sometime. No pressure, no agenda. Just an aunt who's finally paying attention and wants to know her niece better. With love and regret, Aunt Judith. I read the email 3 times, emotions washing over me in waves. Validation, relief, grief for all the years Aunt Judith hadn't been paying attention. Hope that maybe I hadn't lost everyone. I responded simply, coffee sounds good. Thank you for reaching out. Over the next few weeks, small cracks began to appear in Rachel's carefully constructed narrative. Derek's custody hearing revealed the extent of Rachel's financial irresponsibility, her emotional manipulation, and her impact on Brandon's behavioral issues at school. The recordings, ruled admissible, exposed her calculated lies and her plans to isolate me from the family. The judge granted Derek primary custody with Rachel receiving supervised visitation until she completed a court-ordered parenting class and therapy. Rachel was furious, but the evidence was overwhelming. My mother called me for the first time in 6 weeks. Melissa, you need to talk to the judge, she said without preamble. Tell them you were wrong about Rachel, that you exaggerated everything. Brandon needs his mother. I was so shocked by the audacity that I actually laughed. Mom, are you serious right now? You want me to commit perjury because a judge didn't give Rachel what she wanted? I want you to help your sister, Mom said, her voice tight. She's falling apart. She's lost her husband and now her son. How much more do you want to take from her? I didn't take anything from her, I said, my patience finally exhausted. Rachel lost her marriage because of how she treated Derek. She lost primary custody because of how her behavior affected Brandon. None of that is my fault. And the fact that you're calling me to ask me to lie rather than calling Rachel to suggest she actually address her behavior problems tells me everything I need to know about why this family is the way it is. You're heartless, Mom said. Your own sister is suffering and you feel nothing. I feel plenty, I countered. I feel sad that Rachel can't see how her own actions led to these consequences. I feel frustrated that you're still enabling her instead of helping her get the help she actually needs. And I feel absolutely done with being blamed for problems I didn't create. Fine, Mom said coldly. I should have known you wouldn't help. You've made it perfectly clear where your loyalties lie. Yes, I have, I agreed. They lie with truth and healthy boundaries. I'm sorry that's a foreign concept to you. She hung up without another word. Dr. Wells and I had a long session that week, processing the call. Your mother is grieving, Dr. Wells observed. Not for you, unfortunately, but for the family dynamic she's invested decades in maintaining. Rachel's mask is slipping. The golden child isn't so golden anymore. That forces your mother to confront uncomfortable truths about her own role in creating this dysfunction. Will she ever see it? I asked. Will my parents ever acknowledge their part in this? Maybe, Dr. Wells said, but probably not anytime soon. And you need to make peace with that possibility. You may never get the acknowledgement or apology you deserve from them. Can you live with that? I thought about it carefully. I think I can. I don't like it, but I've stopped expecting them to suddenly become different people. I've stopped hoping they'll wake up one day and realize how badly they've treated me. And weirdly, accepting that has made it hurt less. That's growth, Dr. Wells said with a smile. Real, significant growth. Christmas approached, and with it came decisions about traditions and celebrations. Emma asked if we'd be seeing Grandma and Grandpa, and I told her honestly that we wouldn't this year. Are they still in timeout? Emma asked. Something like that, I said. Sometimes grown-up timeouts last longer than kid timeouts. That's okay, Emma said, with the remarkable resilience of children. Nana and Papa said they're getting me a big present this year. James's parents had indeed embraced their role as Emma's primary grandparents with enthusiasm. They came to her school play, attended her parent-teacher conference with us, and took her for special grandmother-granddaughter days that left Emma glowing with happiness. On Christmas morning, we opened presents in our pajamas, just the 3 of us, and it felt perfect. No tension about whose gift was more expensive or whose child got more attention. No walking on eggshells to avoid triggering Rachel's jealousy. Just pure, uncomplicated joy. After Emma went to bed that night, exhausted from excitement and sugar, James and I sat on the couch, the Christmas tree lights casting soft shadows around the room. Are you okay? James asked, pulling me close. You know what? I said. I actually am. This was the first Christmas in my entire life where I didn't spend the whole day anxious about making everyone happy or comparing myself to Rachel or managing family drama. It was just us, and it was perfect. New traditions, James said, kissing my forehead. Better traditions. In January, Derek's divorce was finalized. Rachel got the house but had to refinance to buy out Derek's share, which would be challenging given her financial situation. Derek got primary custody of Brandon, who would spend alternating weekends with Rachel once she completed her court-ordered programs. I heard through Aunt Judith that Rachel was furious, still insisting the whole thing was my fault, still playing the victim to anyone who would listen. But the number of people listening had dwindled significantly. Even my mother, according to Aunt Judith, had started questioning some of Rachel's claims once the divorce details became known. She's not ready to admit she was wrong about everything, Aunt Judith told me over coffee, but she's starting to see the cracks in Rachel's story. That's something. Is it weird that I don't care anymore? I asked, whether she sees it or not, whether she ever apologizes. It's not weird, Aunt Judith said. It's healthy. You've stopped needing their validation. That's the best possible outcome for you, even if it's not the Hollywood ending where everyone realizes they were wrong and begs your forgiveness. In February, Brandon started therapy to address his behavioral issues and work through the divorce. Derek called to update me occasionally, always grateful for my testimony that had helped him win custody. He's doing better, Derek reported after Brandon's first month of therapy. The therapist says he's been taught to expect special treatment and doesn't know how to handle disappointment appropriately, but he's learning, slowly. That's good, I said. He's lucky to have you fighting for him. I'm lucky you were willing to stand up and tell the truth, Derek replied. Most people just go along with Rachel to avoid conflict. You were brave enough to choose what was right over what was easy. In March, something unexpected happened. My father called. Melissa, it's Dad. I almost dropped the phone. Dad, hi. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, he said, his voice rough. About the birthday party, the divorce, the custody battle, about how your mother and I responded to it all. I waited, barely breathing. I'm not ready to say we were wrong about everything, he continued slowly, but I'm starting to think we maybe didn't have the full picture. Your mother and I, we've always tried to help Rachel more because we thought she needed it more. She's always struggled with things that came easy to you, but maybe we went too far. Maybe we let her get away with behavior we shouldn't have excused. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't even a complete acknowledgement, but it was more than I'd ever expected. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. That means something to me. Your mother isn't there yet, Dad warned. She's still very defensive about Rachel, but I wanted you to know I've been thinking, and I miss you. I miss Emma. We miss you too, I said, surprised to find it was true despite everything. Could we maybe have dinner sometime? Dad asked. Just you, me, James, and Emma. Your mother wouldn't need to know right away, just to see each other. Talk. I'd like that, I said. But Dad, I need you to understand something first. I'm not going to apologize for what happened. I'm not going to pretend I was wrong to set boundaries with Rachel. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on mutual respect, not me going back to being the accommodating daughter who sacrifices herself to keep everyone comfortable. I understand, Dad said. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking for a chance to do better. We scheduled dinner for the following week. I told Dr. Wells about it in our next session. How do you feel about it? She asked. Cautiously hopeful, I admitted. I don't expect everything to magically be fixed, but it's a start, more than I thought I'd get. Just remember, Dr. Wells cautioned, progress isn't always linear. Your father might take steps forward and then backward. Be prepared for that possibility. Dinner with my father went better than expected. He was gentle with Emma, asking about school and her friends without the distraction he'd always shown in the past. He apologized, stiffly but sincerely, for not being there when we needed him. I let your mother take the lead on family matters, he said. I always have, but that meant I abdicated responsibility for making sure both my daughters were treated fairly. That was wrong of me. It wasn't everything I'd wanted to hear, but it was something. A foundation to maybe, possibly, build on. Over the following months, my father and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He came to Emma's kindergarten graduation, sitting with James's parents and conspicuously not mentioning it to my mother. He took Emma out for ice cream and called me afterward to tell me how proud he was of the young woman I'd become, of the mother I was to Emma. My mother remained distant, still firmly in Rachel's corner. I'd made peace with that reality. Some bridges burned couldn't be rebuilt, at least not yet, maybe not ever. Rachel continued to post on social media about her struggles, her victimhood, her unfair treatment by the family court system, but her audience had shrunk. People were tired of the drama. Even my mother, according to my father, had started suggesting Rachel focus less on social media and more on completing her court-ordered requirements. By Emma's 6th birthday in July, nearly a year after the cake incident that had started everything, my life looked completely different. We celebrated with a small party at our house, attended by Emma's school friends, James's family, my father, and Aunt Judith. Emma had requested chocolate cake this year, and I made it without any anxiety about someone else's child not liking the flavor, because the people at our table respected boundaries. They understood that birthday celebrations were about the birthday child, not about accommodating everyone else's preferences. As I watched Emma blow out her candles, surrounded by people who genuinely loved her without conditions, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. James found me in the kitchen later, watching through the window as Emma played in the backyard with her friends. Happy? He asked. Yeah, I said, surprised to realize it was completely true. I am. Not the way I thought I'd be happy a year ago. Not with the family I thought I'd have, but happy in a real, solid way that doesn't depend on pleasing people who'll never be pleased. New traditions, James reminded me, pulling me close. Better traditions. Better everything, I agreed. 2 weeks after Emma's party, I received a letter in the mail. My mother's handwriting on the envelope made my heart race, but I opened it anyway. Melissa, it read. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the divorce and custody situation. Your father has been talking to me about things I didn't want to hear, about patterns I didn't want to see. I'm not ready to say I was wrong about everything. I'm not ready to admit I favored Rachel over you. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe I didn't see the whole picture. If maybe I made excuses for behavior I shouldn't have excused. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for a relationship. I just wanted you to know I'm thinking. I'm questioning, that's all. Mom, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't an admission of wrongdoing, but it was a crack in the armor. A tiny acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been crazy or vindictive or wrong. I showed the letter to James. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Not yet. If she's ready to really examine her behavior and our family dynamics, she'll do more than think and question. She'll take action. She'll reach out. She'll apologize. Until then, this letter is just another way of testing whether I'll do the work of reconciliation so she doesn't have to." "And if she never does more?" James asked. "Then I have the life I built," I said, looking around our home, thinking of Emma laughing in the backyard, of my father's tentative but genuine efforts to connect, of Aunt Judith's belated but real support, of James's family welcoming me completely. And that's enough. More than enough. 6 months later, as autumn leaves fell and Emma started first grade, I received another call from Derek. "I thought you'd want to know," he said. "Rachel finished her parenting classes and therapy. She's doing better with Brandon during their visits. She's still, Rachel, still entitled, still difficult, but she's learned to manage it better around Brandon. He's thriving, by the way. His teachers say he's like a different kid this year." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely meaning it. "I'm glad he's doing well." "Melissa, I know this whole situation has cost you a lot," Derek continued. "Your relationship with your family, the drama, all of it. I wanted you to know it mattered. Your testimony, your willingness to stand up for the truth. It changed Brandon's life. It probably saved him from turning into an adult version of Rachel's worst qualities. I'm glad something good came from it," I said. After we hung up, I thought about Derek's words. The cost had been high. I'd lost my relationship with my mother, at least for now. I'd lost extended family members who chose Rachel's comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. I'd lost the illusion that my family of origin would ever be what I'd always hoped it could be. But I'd gained something too. Self-respect, boundaries, a clear understanding of what healthy relationships looked like. The ability to model for Emma that standing up for yourself was worth the cost. On Thanksgiving, our second one without my mother or Rachel, we hosted dinner at our house. My father came, along with Aunt Judith, James's entire family, and several friends who'd become chosen family over the years. The table was loud with conversation and laughter, filled with people who loved each other without conditions or complicated power dynamics. Emma, now 6.5, said grace before the meal with a simplicity that made my throat tight. "Thank you for this food and for everyone at this table who loves us," she said. "Thank you that we don't have to worry about people being mean anymore. Amen." Out of the mouths of babes, I thought, squeezing James's hand under the table. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. "Your mother asked about you yesterday," he said quietly. "Asked how you were doing. If Emma still asks about her." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her you're doing well, that Emma is thriving, that you've built a good life surrounded by people who appreciate you." He paused. "I also told her that if she wants to be part of that life, she needs to stop waiting for you to make the first move, that the ball is in her court, and it has been for over a year." "How did she respond?" "She didn't," Dad admitted, "but she didn't argue either. That's progress for your mother." I hugged my father, this man who was trying, however imperfectly, to make amends for decades of abdicated responsibility. "Thank you," I said, "for trying, for seeing, for being here." "Thank you for not giving up on me," he replied. As December approached and Emma buzzed with excitement about Christmas, I realized something profound. The story of the thrown-away birthday cake, the story that had fractured my family and forced me to completely rebuild my life, wasn't actually a story about a cake at all. It was a story about a woman who finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep other people warm. A story about choosing truth over comfortable lies, boundaries over blind loyalty, self-respect over family approval. It was a story about learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for your children is to walk away from toxicity, even when that toxicity comes wrapped in the word family. And it was a story about discovering that the family you build, the family you choose, can be more real and more valuable than the family you were born into. On Christmas Eve, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those wise eyes that sometimes seemed far older than 6. "Mommy, are you sad we don't see Grandma anymore?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm also happy that we have so many people who love us. Nana and Papa, Aunt Sarah, Great Aunt Judith, Grandpa. We're very lucky." "And Daddy," Emma added. "And Daddy," I agreed, smiling. "I'm glad Aunt Rachel doesn't throw our cakes away anymore," Emma said sleepily. "Me too, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "Me too." As I left her room and returned downstairs where James was wrapping the last of the presents, I thought about how far we'd come in 18 months, how much had changed, how much I had changed. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn my family's love and approval, bending and accommodating and sacrificing. And in the end, standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and refusing to accept toxic behavior had cost me some relationships, but had saved others, including the most important one of all, my relationship with myself. The thrown birthday cake had been the catalyst, but not the cause. The cause had been decades of dysfunction, of favoritism, of enabling behavior that should have been addressed years ago. I hadn't destroyed my family by refusing to buy a replacement cake. I'd simply finally refused to keep pretending the dysfunction was normal, and that refusal had set me free. Emma's 7th birthday would come around eventually, and she'd request whatever cake she wanted, and I'd make it without fear that someone would destroy it to satisfy another child's preferences. Because the people at our table understood respect. They understood boundaries. They understood that love without conditions is the only kind of love worth having. As for my mother and Rachel, they could continue living in their world where Rachel was always the victim and I was always the villain. I couldn't change that narrative for them. I could only change how I responded to it, and I chose to respond with the truth, with boundaries, and with the peaceful certainty that I'd done the right thing, regardless of the cost. What do you think about standing up to toxic family dynamics? Have you ever had to set boundaries that cost you relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about family, betrayal, and standing up for yourself. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to choose yourself.